You're lying there at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every text, every mistake, wondering how something that once felt so right could end like this. Your heart feels heavy, your mind keeps looping the same story, and a part of you secretly hopes they'll come back just to make this pain stop. But here's the truth no one tells you. The only real cure for heartbreak isn't a message from them or some magical closure moment. It's something deeper, something most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. It's about choosing to give yourself the closure you've been waiting for, breaking the toxic loop of memories that keep hurting you, finding tiny moments of joy even when everything feels dark, cutting off those emotional crumbs that leave you starving for validation, and shifting your mindset from why me to what's this teaching me? But most importantly, it's about rebuilding who you are without them. Because the version of you that's coming next is stronger, wiser, and no longer dependent on someone who couldn't love you the way you deserve. If you're tired of feeling stuck, this is the only way forward, and it's the most powerful thing you'll ever do for yourself. One of the hardest parts of heartbreak is the waiting for that text that never comes, waiting for them to realize what they lost, waiting for an apology, an explanation, or some grand gesture that makes sense of it all. You sit there staring at your phone, replaying every conversation, every argument, every moment that led to the ending, hoping that at some point they're going to reach out and say the one thing that finally gives you peace. And deep down, even if you don't want to admit it, part of you is hoping for one last moment of connection, one last chance to feel seen by them, to be chosen again. But here's the painful truth. Waiting for closure from someone who already broke your heart is like waiting for a wound to heal while you keep reopening it every single day. Every time you check their social media, every time you reread old messages, every time you imagine how they're doing, what they're thinking, whether they miss you, you're handing over your power. You're giving them control over your healing. And the longer you wait for them to give you closure, the longer you stay stuck in a chapter that's already over. The person who left or ghosted you or betrayed you, they've already made their decision. Their silence is their answer. Their lack of effort is their explanation. And as brutal as that sounds, there's also freedom in it, because it means you don't need to keep chasing their words to validate your pain. You don't need them to give you permission to move on. Closure is not some magical moment that comes wrapped in perfect words from the other person. It's a decision to stop asking questions that only hurt you more, a decision to accept that sometimes people leave without giving you the courtesy of an explanation that makes sense. And that doesn't mean your love wasn't real. It doesn't mean you weren't enough. It just means they weren't capable of giving you the love and respect you deserve. That's on them, not you. And I know when you're in it, when the heartbreak feels raw and fresh, everything in you wants to resist this truth. You tell yourself that if you just wait a little longer, if you just send one more message, if you just get one more conversation, it'll bring clarity. But how many times have you already gone back for one more conversation? How many times have you gotten back in touch, hoping it would give you peace, only to feel worse after, only to walk away with more confusion, more hurt, and more self-doubt? The most important step you can take for yourself right now is to close the door fully, not halfway, not with one foot still stuck in the past, fully. That means no more late night texts, no more checking their online status, No more wondering if they'll reach out on your birthday or send a message after seeing your new post. You draw a line, not for them, but for you. Because every time you stay stuck in limbo, you're delaying the life that's waiting for you on the other side of this pain. So look at the door that was waiting for you on the other side of this pain. The friendships that need your attention, the passions you've put on hold, the version of you who is stronger, more self-aware, and more in love with life than ever before. That version is waiting for you to stop looking backward. Closure is you saying, I may not have all the answers. I may never get the apology I deserve, but I refuse to keep bleeding over someone who isn't even holding the knife anymore. What are you waiting for? Just do it. The second takeaway is the one that we've talked about before. This word is waiting for the you who is in no hurry. So look up someone with an empathy pen. It's you choosing to heal yourself instead of outsourcing that job to the person who hurt you. You don't get closure when they come back with perfect words. You get closure the moment you decide that your healing matters more than their explanation. You know, one of the most brutal parts of heartbreak isn't just the loss of the person. It's the mental movie we keep replaying in our heads over and over again, the highlight reel of the best moments, the laughs, the kisses, the deep conversations at 2 a.m. where it felt like you were the only two people in the world. We replay that dinner when they looked at you like you were the most important person on the planet, or that spontaneous weekend trip where everything just felt easy and right. And then right alongside that, we start replaying the other stuff too, the fights, the confusing mixed signals, the moments they pulled away, the last conversation before it all fell apart. It becomes this loop that doesn't stop. You're brushing your teeth, and suddenly there they are in your head again. You're trying to work, and your brain drifts back to what you could have done differently. Even when you're with friends, laughing at something unrelated, a piece of you still feels like you're watching your own life from the outside, because emotionally, you're still stuck back there. And here's the thing that most people don't realize in the middle of heartbreak. The pain isn't just coming from the breakup itself. It's coming from the story you're telling yourself about the breakup. The narrative that keeps running in your mind like a broken record. And what does that story usually sound like? It sounds like, maybe if I'd just tried harder, if I'd been more fun, more patient, less needy, more understanding, maybe they'd still be here. It sounds like, we were so perfect together, I'll never find that kind of connection again. It sounds like, they were the love of my life and I ruined it. Or worse, they were the love of my life and they didn't choose me. That narrative is what keeps the wound open. That's what stops you from moving on. And the thing about stories is, they're sticky. Once you've told yourself the same version enough times, it starts to feel like truth. It starts to feel like the only reality. But it's not the truth. It's just a truth. One version, heavily edited, emotionally charged, and almost always biased in the worst way against yourself. If you want to start healing, you have to interrupt that story. You have to catch yourself in the act of romanticizing someone who wasn't showing up for you the way you deserved. You have to call yourself out when you're replaying only the good parts and conveniently skipping over all the ways you felt insecure, unloved, or confused in that relationship. It's like being addicted to a highlight reel that leaves out all the bad scenes. You're rewatching a trailer for a movie that never actually existed the way you remember it. And as long as you keep doing that, you'll stay emotionally tied to a fantasy instead of seeing the reality. Now, that doesn't mean you need to hate the person. You don't need to rewrite them as some villain in your mind, but you do need to be honest with yourself about the full picture, about how many times you felt uncertain, about how often you questioned your worth. about how many nights you stayed awake wondering where you stood with them. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If this relationship had really been what you're romanticizing it to be right now, you wouldn't be heartbroken today. You wouldn't be sitting here picking through the rubble of something that wasn't built to last. And look, I get it. The brain craves patterns, familiarity. It wants to attach itself to something, even if that something hurts. That's why interrupting this story takes work, real, conscious work. It starts with awareness, noticing when you're falling back into the loop, when you catch yourself daydreaming about the sweet texts, but ignoring the days of silence that followed, when you remember the way they touched your face, but conveniently forget how distant they felt emotionally right after. And when that happens, you gently but firmly redirect your thoughts. Remind yourself, this is just a memory, it's not my future. Or, this is one version of the story, there's a fuller picture I need to see. Sometimes you'll have to do this 50 times a day at first. But every time you interrupt the loop, you weaken its grip on you. You start replacing the fantasy with facts, with reality, with the knowledge that you deserve more than someone who wasn't all in. You deserve peace, consistency, love that doesn't leave you guessing. The more you do this, the more you'll notice the mental reel slowing down. The flashbacks will become less vivid. The emotional pull will start to loosen, until one day you'll catch yourself genuinely enjoying a moment in the present without the ghost of them hovering over it. And that's the beginning of real healing. When you're heartbroken, there's this overwhelming pressure to have some big moment where everything suddenly makes sense. People talk about these epiphanies where one day they just wake up and it doesn't hurt anymore. And that sounds great. It sounds like the kind of magic we all secretly hope for. But the truth is, that's not how healing actually happens. It's not one big decision. It's not one tearful conversation with friends. It's not even one empowering quote you see on Instagram at 2 a.m. when you're scrolling because you can't sleep. Real healing happens in micro moments. It happens in small, seemingly insignificant decisions you make every single day that slowly start to rebuild you from the inside out. And the tricky part is, when you're in the middle of heartbreak, those small moments don't feel like they're making any difference. They feel pointless. Getting out of bed feels pointless. Making a cup of coffee feels pointless. Going for a walk feels like a waste of energy when your mind is screaming at you to lie back down and wallow in the sadness. But here's what I want you to know. The cure isn't in waiting to feel better first and then take action. The cure is taking action first, even when you still feel terrible, even when your heart is still heavy, even when the motivation is at zero. It's deciding to stack tiny moments of forward motion that over time become momentum. You're not going to want to. That's a given. You're not going to feel like showing up for life, but showing up anyway is the cure. And the moments don't have to be big. It could be going outside for 10 minutes just to get fresh air on your face. It could be texting a friend just to say, hey, I'm having a rough day. It could be choosing to put on real clothes instead of staying in the same pajamas you've been wearing for 3 days straight. It could be cooking yourself a meal instead of ordering junk food again. Every time you do one of these things, you're telling yourself on a deep subconscious level, I'm still worth showing up for, even if your heart's not in it. One of the biggest lies heartbreak tells us is that the pain will last forever. It convinces you that this is just who you are now, sad, broken, unwanted. But that's not who you are. That's just the chapter you're living through. And the fastest way to turn the page on that chapter isn't by sitting in bed thinking your way out of it. It's by moving your body changing your environment, doing things that create even the smallest surge of dopamine. There will be days when you get up and brush your teeth, and that will feel like an Olympic achievement. And that's okay. Celebrate that. There will be days when you actually get through an hour at the gym, or finish that book you started 3 months ago, or go out to dinner with friends and catch yourself laughing at something silly. And in those moments, you're going to feel something weird. You'll feel like yourself again. Maybe not completely, maybe not fully, but like little sparks of you are coming back online. The mistake people make is waiting until they feel inspired before they take action. They wait for the motivation to arrive like some guest that never shows up. But motivation isn't the guest, it's the result. It shows up after you've taken the action, not before. So the new rule for yourself is this: don't negotiate with your feelings. Don't wait for them to catch up. Lead with action. Let your feelings follow. And when you start stacking these small moments, whether it's a walk, a phone call, a workout, cooking, reading, anything that brings you even the faintest flicker of peace, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself day by day that life still exists outside of this person and this heartbreak. You're building proof that joy, laughter, pride, connection, all of it is still available to you. And I'll be honest, some days you'll slip. You'll stay in bed longer than you planned. You'll scroll their social media. You'll cry again when you thought you were done crying. But that's part of it too. Healing isn't linear. It's messy. It's progress followed by setbacks, followed by more progress. But if you keep stacking those small wins, if you keep choosing life in tiny ways, one day you'll wake up and realize you've created a whole new normal, one where the pain isn't the loudest thing in the room anymore. One of the most subtle but dangerous things that keeps us heartbroken longer than we need to be is the trail of emotional crumbs we leave scattered around our life. And I want to explain exactly what I mean by that, because most people don't even realize they're doing it. When someone leaves us, when a relationship ends, there's this tiny part of us that doesn't fully let go. Even if we tell ourselves, I'm done, or I'm moving on, our actions often betray us. We keep little pieces of that person close. A saved text thread we occasionally scroll through. A song we replay because it reminds us of them. A hoodie that still smells like them, folded at the back of the closet like a secret we're not ready to bury. And of course, the most tempting one of all, their social media profile. Just one tap away, like an emotional hit we can take anytime we want to feel close to them again. But here's the harsh truth. Every time you engage with one of those emotional crumbs, you are keeping yourself stuck in the very pain you're trying to escape. Because what happens when you scroll through old texts? You end up reliving the good moments, the sweet messages, the little inside jokes. And because our brains are wired for nostalgia and emotional reward, we conveniently forget the lonely nights, the arguments, the unmet needs, the part where they didn't show up for you when it mattered most. Every time you look at their profile, you get a manufactured, edited version of their life. They post a story, and suddenly you're spiraling. Are they out with someone new? Are they happy without me? Was I really that easy to replace? And your day gets hijacked by feelings of rejection, comparison, and longing, all triggered by a few seconds of curiosity you told yourself was harmless. Even music becomes a trap. That one playlist that feels like the soundtrack to your heartbreak, you put it on thinking it's cathartic, but what it's really doing is reinforcing the connection. You're not healing, you're rehearsing your sadness on repeat. And I get it, I really do. Letting go of these emotional crumbs feels scary. In some weird way, they're comforting. They're the last threads tying you to a time when you felt loved, wanted, connected. Getting rid of them feels like admitting it's really over. Like if you delete the messages, it erases the moments that mattered. Like if you stop looking at their photos, you're pretending the relationship didn't exist. But keeping these crumbs around is like trying to heal from a wound while constantly scratching at the scab. It can't close. It can't form new skin. Every time you revisit those little reminders, you're ripping the wound back open. What you need is a clean break from the noise. A detox. Not because you're being dramatic, not because you're trying to prove anything to them, but because your peace and your mental health require it. That means deleting the chat history, even if you cry while doing it. It means unfollowing or muting their profile, even if your fingers hesitate over the button. It means throwing out the hoodie, the gifts, the little objects that transport you back to nights you now wish you could forget. You're not being heartless by doing this. You're being responsible for your healing. You're setting up an environment where your heart finally has the space to breathe again, where new, better memories can start to grow because you've made room for them. And here's what's beautiful about this process. Once you remove those emotional crumbs, you'll find that the obsessive thoughts, the longing, the constant urge to check on them, it all starts to lose its grip on you. Not overnight, but gradually. What used to feel like a daily emotional earthquake will begin to settle into silence. And in that silence, you'll start to hear your own voice again. You'll reconnect with your own needs, your own identity, your own future. You're not erasing your past. You're choosing to stop reliving a chapter that's already finished, so you can finally write the next one. When we go through heartbreak, one of the most natural, almost automatic questions we start asking ourselves is, why did this happen to me? It's like this internal loop that plays in our heads over and over again. We sit there staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., running through every memory, every conversation, every tiny detail of what we did or didn't do. We analyze text messages like we're crime scene investigators. We look at where we point a finger, spit, gulp, cry, punch in the face. We sit there staring at the ceiling over and over again. We sit there staring at the ceiling over and over again. We sit there staring at the ceiling over and over again. We sit there staring at the ceiling. We replay the moment they pulled away. We search for reasons, for signs, for answers that will somehow make the pain make sense. And in doing that, what we're really doing is staying stuck. Because here's the thing, asking, why did this happen to me, feels like you're seeking clarity. But what you're actually doing is reinforcing the belief that you're a victim of your circumstances. It's like standing in a burning building and asking why the fire started while the flames are still growing around you. The better question, the one that will actually get you out of the fire, is, what can I learn from this? That shift seems small on the surface, but it's huge in practice. When you go from thinking of yourself as the person this pain happened to the person who's going to grow from it, everything changes. Because now, instead of feeling powerless, you start regaining control. You start seeing opportunities for transformation. And that's the part people don't tell you about heartbreak. Yes, it's devastating. Yes, it feels like your heart's been physically ripped out of your chest some days. But heartbreak is also one of the most powerful catalysts for personal growth you'll ever experience, if you let it be. And pretty much almost all love, can be. So, what can you actually learn from this? Start with the relationship itself. What did it reveal about your patterns? Did you ignore red flags you shouldn't have? Did you overinvest too quickly? Did you lose your sense of self in the process of loving them? Did you confuse chemistry with compatibility? These aren't questions to make you feel bad about yourself. They're questions that help you take back your power. Because when you start seeing the truth with clear eyes, you become better equipped for the future. You stop falling for the same people who hurt you. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop giving unlimited chances to people who show you again and again that they don't know how to love you well. And sometimes the learning isn't even about what you did wrong. Sometimes the lesson is just about how resilient you are, about how much strength you actually have to pick yourself up after something that felt like it should have broken you completely. It's about learning that you can survive without someone you once thought was your whole world, that you can go to that restaurant alone, walk through that city street by yourself, lie in your bed at night without their goodnight text, and still be okay. Not just okay, but thriving in a way you didn't even know was possible. It's also about learning to set better boundaries, to listen to your gut when something feels off, to recognize when your standards are being eroded by your desire to keep someone around. And maybe most importantly, it's about learning to trust yourself again. Heartbreak can shake your confidence to its core. It makes you doubt your instincts. It makes you question whether you're lovable, whether you're enough, whether you're even worthy of the kind of love you dream of. But by shifting the question to, what can I learn from this? You start to rebuild that trust with yourself, brick by brick. And I get it right now. This may sound like just another motivational speech moment. It's easy to hear this and nod along and still feel that heaviness sitting on your chest when you wake up tomorrow morning. But this isn't about pretending you're fine overnight. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's about giving yourself a direction, a mental and emotional compass that points you forward instead of keeping you trapped in the rearview mirror of what was. The truth is, this moment, this heartbreak, is a fork in the road. One path is staying stuck, replaying the same story, the same pain, the same questions that go nowhere. The other path, the harder one, but the one worth taking, is choosing to grow, choosing to ask better questions, choosing to become the kind of person who looks back on this heartbreak one day and says, that didn't break me, it built me. You know, one of the hardest parts about heartbreak isn't just missing the person, it's missing who you were when they were in your life, that identity you created, the one where they were part of your routines, your future plans, your happiness. Feels like it's been ripped away overnight. And suddenly, you're not just grieving them, you're grieving the version of yourself that existed with them, the couple version of you, the one who woke up to their texts, made plans around their schedule, laughed at their jokes, dreamed about trips, imagined milestones. You weren't just in love with them, you were in love with the life you were building in your head with them in it. That's why heartbreak can feel like identity loss. It's like waking up and not recognizing your own reflection, because the role you played for so long, whether it was their girlfriend, their support system, or the person who mattered most to them, is suddenly gone. And with that, all the mental and emotional scaffolding that held your sense of self up begins to collapse. You walk around with this giant question mark hovering over you, asking, who am I without them? And then you ask, who am I without them? And I get it. It feels destabilizing. You scroll through your phone and realize half your photos, half your texts, half your plans, all roads lead back to them. Songs trigger memories. Places feel haunted. Your brain keeps wanting to play that mental game of, what were you doing this time last week, last month, last year? It's like your mind refuses to let go of the role you had assigned them in your life story. But here's the truth. Healing starts when you reclaim your identity as something that's not attached to them. It starts when you stop being the person who waits for them to reach out, or stalks their Instagram story hoping for a sign, or replays the same 3 good memories on a loop, ignoring all the bad ones that made the relationship unsustainable in the first place. And let me tell you something really important. You don't just go back to being the person you were before them, because you're not that person anymore. You've been through something now. You've learnt, you've grown, you've felt pain, you've seen where you overgave, where you settled, where you ignored red flags because you loved them so much. So going back isn't the goal. The goal is to build a new version of yourself, one that's stronger, wiser, more self-aware, more in control of your happiness. That means asking yourself new questions. Instead of waking up thinking, I wonder if they miss me today, ask yourself, what can I do today that makes me proud of myself? Instead of scrolling their feed at midnight, ask, what part of me still believes I'm not enough without their validation? Instead of replaying old conversations where you wish you said something different, ask, what boundaries do I want to have with the next person I let into my life? This is the season where you rebuild. Slowly, messily, imperfectly, but rebuild anyway. Start with the basics: your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, your friendships. Sign up for that class you've been putting off. Visit that city you always wanted to go to but didn't because they weren't interested. Say yes to the new coffee shop down the street. Learn to enjoy your own company again. Be selfish with your energy. And yeah, there will be days where you backslide, days where you'll miss them so much it physically aches, days where you'll feel tempted to send that text, days where the loneliness feels louder than your logic. But that's part of the process. You're retraining your heart. You're teaching yourself that happiness doesn't live inside a text message from them. It lives in the way you show up for yourself, over and over again, even on the days when it feels hardest. And here's the beautiful part. There's going to come a day, sooner than you think, where you'll wake up and they won't be the first thing on your mind, where you'll go an entire afternoon without thinking about them, where you'll laugh at something and realize it's been a while since you laughed like that. And you'll catch yourself smiling, not because they came back, but because you came back to yourself. That's the cure, not time, not distraction, not waiting for their apology. The real cure is rebuilding you.